Hello and welcome to Community Chats. I'm your host, Ali Hammer, and today we're joined with John Boesen, the CTO at Symbio. John, welcome to the show. Can you start by telling our audience a little bit about Symbio and your role?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. It's great to be here. Look, Symbio is a great Australian success story, which a lot of people don't know about. So we were founded in 2002 under a business called MyNetPhone, and we had a simple mission to transform the way voice communications would be delivered to households, small, medium business, enterprise, government. And it was all underpinned by a new technology called voice over IP, which now is sort of everywhere and everyone's heard about that. But what we were really founded to do was bridge this voice over IP world with this telco world, because the two worlds were very, very different. Now, the interesting thing is a couple of years after we founded, Skype surfaced, and hopefully many of you have probably used Skype in your time, but Skype was a classic software-based as-a-service company providing voice over IP connectivity between computer and computer. But when it first launched, you couldn't make a phone call from Skype to a telephone number. And that's where we came into the fold. And we were actually Skype's seventh customer globally, partner globally. And what we did is that we provided this software approach to telco. So we sort of look like two companies. So to a telco, we look like a telco. We build infrastructure and we build networks and we interconnect to telecommunication incumbents in countries. But we also, the other half, we look like a purebred software company. So to Skype, that's what we looked like. We looked like a software company, and they were able to use our software APIs that we had created to hide all the complexity of being a telco. And that is how they were able to integrate local number calling capability into their product. And now, 20 years on, that's pretty much what Symbio lives and breathes now. Is we're powering a lot of technology, a lot of big players that you would use in your everyday life. Actually, even this Zoom call that we're using today, the phone numbers that are presented in these Zoom calls are actually on our network. So we've basically created this bridge between the software world and the telco world. In terms of, I guess, my role in the organization, look, ultimately, I'm responsible for driving our technology strategy that's going to execute our company strategy, which is now to deploy our technology across Southeast Asia. But specifically, my role is to make sure our tech stack can scale. It has the aspirations of having 100% uptime. There's no point talking about 5 nines anymore. That's sort of like, okay, well, that's standard. So we aspire to have 100% uptime, and everything we do, we try and achieve that. It's very difficult to achieve, but that's what we try and do. We try and do it in a frictionless way. So we really want to make sure that where it's transparent as possible to our customers and the rest of the business. But a big part of my role is also about building the engineering culture within the company and really challenging them to grow and to learn from success and failure. But ultimately, the best part, I guess, in my role is just working with a lot of talented individuals that are at different parts of their career development and just helping guide them and pushing them to do things that they thought they couldn't do, and with the ultimate view to do things better than yesterday. So yeah, that's the sort of overview of Symbio and my role.
Thank you so much, John. I mean, your team are so lucky to have you. Just in the description there, it sounds like you love the company. What you're doing is so incredible. So I wanted to ask you, John, because Symbio recently had a major restructure. So can you walk us through a little bit about what's changed and what does this actually mean for Symbio's customers?
Yeah, look, we previously operated as a monolith. So we were effectively a shared services group. So technology within Symbio was effectively a shared services group. And with that came a lot of prioritization conversations. Because we were a shared resource pool, we had to make sure that everyone got fed, if you like, that we could deliver what their customers were wanting. But it did create a lot of friction and a lot of inefficiency. And part of our culture, which is a learning-based culture, we wanted to challenge ourselves to say, is there a better way to do this? So we did some experiments. We tried a few things. Some failed, but a couple of our experiments worked. And what that led us to was to break into 3 lines of business that were targeted to the 3 customer personas that we saw. So we saw our different customers that we were servicing were very different. Everyone had different requirements and were coming from different angles. They had different problems to solve. So we effectively realigned into what we call UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service division, CPaaS, Communication Platform as a Service, and one we call TAS, which is Telco as a Service. And they sort of map to, the Telco as a Service maps to small, medium business, and the UCaaS and CPaaS ones sort of map to enterprise and government with a few twists. So we effectively broke the monolith into 3 sort of macro services or microservices, or agile startups, is the best way I like to think about it. But they operate under the banner of a global group, Symbio.global. And that sort of gives with it the stability of an established business, and it gives us the flexibility and agility of a startup. So that's translated then into our customers getting, what they need quicker, because these lines of businesses that we created, we also made sure that they were full stack. So full stack beyond technology. So normally in tech circles, you talk about full stack, you talk about front end, back end, so on and so forth. We really full stack these organizations so that we have sales, operations, everything that you need to run a business. And that was pretty much the heart and soul of the transformation we went through about 12 months ago.
Wow, well, it definitely sounds like you've learned a lot along the way. And John, Symbio launched a full suite of services in Singapore recently, and it's expanding all across Asia. So how has your team been able to launch a full suite of services in just a couple of weeks, actually, when it often takes others several months or even, quite frankly, several years? How did you do this?
Yeah, well, look, it certainly started from us being in that situation where it did take us many years to deploy our technology. In fact, Australia was our first market that we built, and that literally took 5 to 7 years to build that network. We then went into New Zealand, and that took about 5 years. And then we went, well, look, for us to scale, we can't keep doing what we're doing. So Singapore for us, even though it took us 3 years to get into Singapore, behind the scenes, we were investing heavily in our people to upskill them into all things AWS, which is what we did initially. And we started to modernize, all of our processes, our build pipelines. We were adopting CI/CD principles. We were using Terraform and taking infrastructure as code methodologies to everything we do. In actual fact, all our tech stack now is infrastructure as code. So there was a lot of, learning and growth and upskilling that we invested in. And we made a lot of mistakes too along that way, but that led us to a place where we could now deploy our ecosystem behind closed doors, literally within days. Whereas previously we would have had to build all this infrastructure with this infrastructure fixed mindset. So, we're in the 3-year program of work for Singapore, even though externally it looks like it took us 3 years to deploy Singapore, behind the scenes, we had done all this upskilling, all this uplifting, and some other major architectural changes as well, to move away from a monolithic approach, to move to a real-time streaming event model, to abstract all our interfaces so teams could deploy frequently and often. So there was a lot of things that we did, but yeah, it was a mix of all those approaches that has now led us to a great position for us to now tackle our next market, in a third of the time it took for Singapore.
John, to round up this interview, how has your leadership style evolved since the pandemic began? Have you learned anything new that could be of value to, other aspiring CTOs who may be watching this video?
Well, yeah, look, well, first of all, I feel as though I'm always learning, right? I'm always evolving, I guess, as a person, as a leader, and I expect that of all my team and staff as well. But look, lockdown really forced, a different approach. People used to drop into the office. That no longer happened. I could have, physical events where I could talk to the masses and communicate, some pretty important messaging. So I had to switch to Colab platforms, and, Teams played a fairly important role for us. I sort of had to brush up on, my presentation skills through a screen, though not always successfully, to try and connect to people and show emotion and expression. And even, in this interview, I'm sort of using my hands here, which I never used to do that much of. But you're trying to add these other levels of connectivity to how you're communicating with people. We introduced things like real-time polling, so we could, we have that interaction from the audience. we moved to a large Teams meeting where everyone would join, their mics were all on, you know, everyone had to respect each other and turn the mics off because we wanted high degrees of collaboration. But I think during that whole process, for me, you know, never lose sight of your people and their growth. You know, that's really important because, you know, a lot of what we do as technologists is here to stay for many years. So, and a lot of the projects we work on are multi-year projects. So, you know, you've got to grow your people on that journey. So you've really got to think about that. You know, don't be afraid to make big bets, even though you probably know your team can't deliver it in the here and now. You definitely always want to be real, right? Because, you know, you're going to be held accountable by your managers or your exec team or your board. So you don't want to walk the team off a cliff, but you definitely want to set some aspirational goals that maybe even challenge you. But what I can guarantee you is that those little steps that you take towards that goal will get you there. And then when you get there, you'll look back and go, oh my God, you know, we've actually done it. I think it's really important to celebrate those successes as well when you achieve them. But I think most important for young leaders or aspiring CTOs is just remember you're always one cog of a bigger wheel, right? You're not at the top of the wheel. You're not the engine by any means. You're just another cog in that wheel. And it's important for you to understand the purpose of your cog in the bigger team. And to make sure that it's adding value to the team. And the only way you can achieve that is by asking lots of questions and saying, hey, am I giving you what you need? Am I helping you out here? Is there anything that you need? Is there something I'm not doing? But once you've got that clarity, it's then a collective, right? It's then working together as a team. I have my role to do. You know, I've got the luxury of having this chat today with you guys, while, you know, many of my team are working hard at doing what they've got to do. It's a collaborative team effort, but that's probably the big takeaway is just remember that you're just a cog in the wheel.
Absolutely. I mean, I think even if you're the CEO, the MD, it doesn't matter, that stands true. So thank you so much, John, for coming on the show today. The partnership between Symbio and Amazon is amazing. I cannot wait to continue to watch the journey between us. And if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the comment section below and we'll get back to you. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks very much.